Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everyone. I'm very glad to be here to share my thoughts, and I hope maybe set a very broad context, policy context, or political context to what's going on in energy and in renewable energy particularly. And I might just start going very global and work right the way back down to this room if I can. Energy is great. I met Fatih Birol, the Chief Economist with the International Energy Agency yesterday, and I said it's a great subject because you can actually, it's like one of those risk games you used to play as a kid. You're looking all over the world as to what's going on, but you have to bring it home, and that's what I just want to do today, set a very broad context to what's happening in energy in Ireland within an international context. Firstly, on the international, I suppose the imperatives for us to make this switch away from fossil fuels are as strong as ever. The climate change conference in Copenhagen was disappointing in the failure to get a legally binding agreement that would set the world on a course towards a more sustainable energy and economic platform. But there was some good work done within it. There was good elements of work that were finalised there, and the imperative in terms of climate change has not gone away. Despite our winter and our experience, this actually year has been the warmest year record apparently. It's been very hot in Asia, in Africa, while it's been cold in northwestern Europe, North America. The overall global temperature went up this year to the highest ever, I'm told. Some figures from Jim Hansen last week. Equally, Fatih Birol from the International Energy Agency was very strong on this. The energy security issue is just as strong as ever. In fact, more coming into greater clarity. While shale gas discoveries in America may have brought down for a short period the spot price of gas on the world markets, and that may actually have implications on the renewables industry unless we're careful. It may undermine the ability, the financing and other abilities on a global scale for the development of renewables. The underlying resource shortages, the particular shortage that we're going to see in oil and the higher prices we can expect in oil, the higher prices we're already seeing in coal due to high demand from China, means that the major economies are going to be set on a course of trying to work their way from those fossil fuels to provide energy security for the future. So while the last 6 months maybe have had a number of changes in the energy picture, the lack of a climate change deal around the introduction of the recognition that shale gas has had an immediate effect in the UK, or the US market in particular, the underlying imperatives for change are still there. In Europe, working from the globe down to Europe now, we have the advantage, I think, in that we have a very good, consistent political agreement in how we make this switch. The 2020 targets that were established in the last Commission in the run-up to Copenhagen are mandatory, they're legislated, they're sufficient or they're suitably ambitious, and they're locked in. We have a renewables directive, we have the kind of directives around the ETS and the other systems. So there is one on the global scale that maybe is less certainty due to the lack of the climate change deal. In Europe, it's very much locked down. With the exception probably on the energy efficiency side, that three of the three 2020s, there's work needs to be done in actually translating that broad ambition into really measurable, quantifiable targets. It's one of the projects we're going to have to do in the Council of Ministers in the next year. I was at the Council of Ministers meeting last week, and the new Commissioner, my sense is pretty much following the same course as the previous Commissioner Feeble, so I thought was an excellent Energy Commissioner. Had a real vision that efficiency and renewables is the primary plan for Europe in the energy area, and his Commission team, his Director General and his staff have the same view. There was concern, I suppose, with the switch of Commission that might change with the new German Commissioner coming in, but actually my sense is no, the Commission is set on very much the same course. We were discussing at that meeting what is the strategy for the next 7 or 8 years, 10 years, and what's the particular strategy for this new Commission. And I think the recognition around the table was it is about implementation. We don't now need to go back and start again a whole new plan and a whole new strategic direction. We know our strategic direction. It is towards a low carbon future. It's now about implementing that. That's at a very senior, high political level, but it's important to know that as a background understanding to what we're doing. We can have fairly strong certainty in Europe. There's not going to be a change of course. There's not going to be a different political imperative in the energy area, at Energy Council of Ministers area. Maybe just to reflect that, one of the developments that's been fairly centre stage in our last 3 meetings of Energy Council of Ministers has been this whole project of developing integrated offshore grid in northwestern Europe. 9 European EU member countries and Norway came together last autumn and signed a commitment towards this ambition of us developing a much more interconnected northwestern European grid, developing an offshore grid infrastructure to connect in some of the offshore energy systems we want to create as an ambitious plan. Work is ongoing on that in Brussels, and we're looking to the end of this year to present a more detailed agreement in terms of how we'd actually go about doing it. It's going to be difficult. It's difficult engineering, it's difficult economics, it's difficult politics. But I think there's a fundamental shift has occurred in Europe towards such greater interconnection, integration of various different networks, and recognition that we start that in certain sectors. In the Mediterranean, it may be a solar-based interconnection plan, but in our corner of Europe, where the ocean energy potential is probably the biggest indigenous energy source we have, it will go in that direction. As a subset of that, or as maybe a region within that northwestern region, we're working quite closely with the UK government to see how we in particular develop our 2 grids and our market, single electricity market, which we will move towards, I believe, in the next 5 to 10 years. We have, with the Scottish Government and the Northern Ireland Administration, set up what's known as the Isles Project, looking at in one specific area how we would connect up our ocean energy resources west of Scotland, off Northern Ireland, down into the Irish Sea. So we have a meeting between a firm of consultants working now, due to report at the end of this year, early next year, on some of the engineering possibilities as to how we would start connecting up our various grids. We had a meeting of the British-Irish Council, which is one of the bodies set up from the St Andrews Agreement, bringing in all the different Northern, Scottish, UK, London, Welsh and Irish administrations. We're working together in that on a particular strand, looking at those grid issues and looking at the economic issues, the regulatory issues, as to how we would start towards developing a more integrated system between Ireland and Britain as part of this overall European project. And I think that's a very interesting and a kind of groundbreaking sort of project, because we're going to have to take some of the technologies we have displayed here today, in terms of some HVDC technology, converter stations, new offshore systems, power systems, and integrate them into a national grid and indeed a combined UK-Ireland grid, and indeed start thinking down the line of how we're going to connect this into a wider Northwest European grid. And that sounds very broad and very kind of big and long-term. It is, and we're not going to do this tomorrow, but we have to start planning for it today, and indeed start providing financing for it so that it's available tomorrow. So one of the financing aspects I'm looking to pursue is to see whether we can change European Union funding, so that which is due to be reconfigured from 2014 onwards anyway, to provide for some of this interconnection, to provide for some of these offshore grid resources. We've some good studies already backing up what we're doing. The analysis that Eric have done showing on an energy basis the potential benefits from further interconnection, not only the east-west interconnector we're building at the present time, but also further interconnection with the UK and indeed possibly with France. And it's those sort of projects that I think we start planning for now. We look for European support from 2014 onwards, so that from 2020 onwards we start to build out this grid, fulfill the ambitions we have, particularly in the area of offshore energy. And this is very real. I mean, what the UK are committing to and are starting to do in terms of offshore wind energy is truly phenomenal. A really amazing project in scale, in ambition, and in economic implications. So this is not a theoretical exercise. This is not an academic exercise. This is real. It has real political commitment. And we need, as I said, to fulfill that ambition that Brendan Halligan has had, use our comparative advantage in wind power supply particularly, and also potentially down the line in other ocean energy resources, to convert that comparative advantage into an economic opportunity for this state within a greater interconnected European market. It's very broad, but it's what I spent a fair bit of my time on, not for any immediate political gain, but for just setting the right course for the long-term energy development of this country. Bringing it home, I suppose maybe short to the more immediate time frame as to what we're doing. I might just maybe just very briefly, if I can, I can go over just some of the particular developments. We're at 15%, we're slightly above, or it's when we exactly crossed it is not the important point, but within recent months we reached our 2010 target of having 15% of our electricity coming from renewable resources. Pretty much doubling wind power in the last 2 years, 2 to 3 years. So we're on course. We've achieved what we set out we wanted to do for 2010. We now have to meet our target of 40% by 2020. And again, the thing that's encouraging me is it's done, that target and our ambition is based on very good planning. That All Island Grid study, which was completed about 4 or 5 years ago now, completed 2 years ago, has stood up and been shown to be a very good, robust bit of modelling, planning exercise, showing how we could integrate 40% of renewables, primarily from wind, onto our system. The further research that EirGrid have done, looking at the kind of, and indeed the CER have done, looking on the economics of that, which again shows this makes economic sense for us. It provides a good hedge against gas price volatility into the future. It actually helps lower our overall electricity price. I was a great admirer of Shima Arbour and his portfolio analysis theory, just showing how having this alternative renewable source where we know what the price of the fuel supply is in 2020, it's the same price as it is today, zero, gives you great stability in your overall market system. And the CER analysis on top of the All Island Grid study are backing that up, showing yes, this makes economic sense. Similarly, the latest work John Sullivan and others in EirGrid have done, showing that while this is challenging, while we're going to have to push the outer edge of the envelope in what's currently feasible in integration of power systems or renewables into power systems, it is all doable. And as Mike was talking about earlier on, sort of figures come back at that, some sort of level of curtailment around the mid 5, 6, whatever percent curtailment shows that, again, it is within the margins of this is manageable, we can do it. So the analysis to achieve a 40% target is becoming increasingly robust. It's a matter of now actually getting out, building it, delivering it over time. The kind of lesser impediments, the more immediate, bureaucratic, sometimes technical, but largely kind of surmountable problems that would stop us meeting our target, that would not help this country in terms of its energy security, in terms of tapping into the comparative competitive advantage we have in renewable energy resources. In my department, we're about to put up on our website the Renewable Energy Action Plan that we sent over to Brussels as part of this locked down, legislated for renewables drive. And I was reading it last night. It's not good bedtime. It's probably good bedtime reading it. It's fairly tough going reading through, but tough going because you're asked a lot of questions by the European Union as to what your approach is in a whole range of different areas. And I had the sense reading it last night, we are in a good position. We have done some good policy work. We have broadly followed the right policy approach in my mind. And this is going back a number of years now, so it's not just something within my own administration. People would say, of course you say that, but just in general, I think we have the platform right. We have most players here in this country going in the same direction. The regulator, the grid company, EirGrid, our main energy companies, our academic institutions, we're all pretty much on the same track. And I'm just kind of proud enough looking at the Renewable Energy Action Plan as we're sending it in and saying, oh, we've done a lot of work. We have actually the foundation corners in place. So that Renewable Energy Action Plan will go to Brussels at the end of this month. And I hope we'll get support from Brussels just recognising what we are trying to do here. And that actually now we're already in wind integration, probably number 2, I think, in Europe, and we're heading for number 1 pretty quickly, I think. And we will learn from that, we will actually get to have expertise from that will be of benefit and use to this country and other countries. What are the main constraints or what are the risks? Well, firstly, I suppose, is to have a good, solid financial environment to make this investment happen. I said earlier on that one of the outcomes of this shale gas thing is that gas prices are going to come down, looking like staying relatively moderate for the next 5 to 10 years, 5 years. That could undermine some of the investment case. You might see switch back to gas. I see it as a positive thing. I think it helps me with the Minister of Finance and Minister of Enterprise, Trade and Employment, say, don't listen, we can hold gas prices while we make this alternative investment. So we've got this window of opportunity to provide this backup, this alternative, this new, it's not just a backup system, it's actually a future system for this country, while gas prices are maintained reasonably low and keeps our electricity prices from spiking the way they did in recent years. To do that, we need a good extension of our refit scheme. In my mind, our refit scheme has served us well. It's that, what someone years ago said earlier, rocks works in practice, refit works, or rock works in theory, refits work in practice. I do think that it has served us well by the consistent, bankable projects. And we're going back to Brussels now. We've signed off with the department on our application, refit application again, to continue the sort of support measures we have had in place, with slight variations, but broadly following the same approach that we've taken, which I hope will kind of make these projects that we have to build out bankable and deliverable. One of the biggest constraints, and again, stuff Michael was talking earlier on, is probably around the planning side. It's interesting, we did a meeting with the Department of Environment and the Irish Wind Energy Association about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, and there is clearly issues there that we're going to have to overcome. There's issues about special areas of conservation, special protection areas for certain bird species in particular, and the convergence of where we're looking to build, west, northwest, southwest, midwest, where the wind is stronger, with some of those areas of conservation, is a real issue, a real challenge for us to overcome. And I think again we have to look to Brussels to see what sort of solutions they're devising there in the marrying of very absolutely correct objectives around protection of biodiversity and at the same time objectives around developing renewable energy resources. So there's work to be done there. We've recognised that in both our department and the Department of Environment, and I'm looking forward to working with the wind industry to see how we can do this in a collaborative way that doesn't turn into a big battle, because that wouldn't serve anyone's purposes. Likewise in planning, we have a lot of work to do, even probably down at the local, thinking globally, get right down to local council level. We still have a lot of problems in terms of planning extensions, in terms of some of the rules and regulations that surround planning, tree felling. Basically, we're down to the really local implementation stage. We need to overcome some of the blockages that have held us back, and at the same time do it properly within a proper planning system. So again, there's work to be done there, and I know my colleague Minister of Environment is committed to working with the local councils to get the best solution that lives within the proper planning system but allows our renewable energy to develop. Probably the biggest constraint, I come to a conclusion now in a minute, is around the grid, and that is also related to the planning obviously issue. The public concerns around the development of grid is something that's probably the most immediate and most obvious and the most serious threat we have in terms of whether we will or not will not be able to meet our target to actually tap into this renewable system. And I was interested in looking at some of the technologies here today, some of the engineering solutions that might make it easier, where we can, engineering developments could make that an easier task. Whether that's on an underground type solution, we shouldn't rule that out. We should be looking at all different alternatives, or where we have to go overground. And there are instances, from my analysis, having talked to a lot of different engineers about that, where there are some instances we simply have to go overground for a certain amount of this grid development, that we do it in a way that's sensitive and that gets as much public support as possible. But I'm very constantly saying outside is that this is the #1 priority in infrastructure for the country. If we don't build the grid, we won't get the power supply system. We don't get the power supply system, we don't get the cheap energy, clean energy that powers our other industries. So this is crucial infrastructure, and I'm hopeful that EirGrid in particular
we'll be able to build out the grid that they planned for in Grid 25, which we need now. Lastly, and there are some of the obstacles, some of the opportunities for this country in particular, I think is in the demand management side and the energy efficiency side. We need this green, clean, cheap power. As I said, we're going to power our new industries. What are going to be the new industries? What are the new economic opportunities? Where's the growth coming? Where's the new economy coming? And the more I look at it, the more I think it is actually in this smart grid technology that everyone's looking at now, in America, in China, and in Europe. And we have actually, because we're fairly advanced in terms of development of clean power solutions, which will have a variable supply and will need variable demand solutions, because we have a fairly robust grid, one of the legacies of the Celtic Tiger years, which played catch-up on our grid and invested a fair bit in both the distribution and transmission grid, distribution particularly. Because we're a single island where we can kind of coordinate things reasonably quickly on that grid, because we have most of the leading ICT companies here who are now looking at that issue and are starting to bring in their top people to actually look at smart grid solutions developing smart grid solutions here. It's an economic opportunity for us that I think is huge. And we're starting to see it happen. And the fact that IBM came here and set up their smart grid, smart cities, world centre for research in Dublin, that's a huge opportunity for us to leverage that with some of the work we're doing in UCD in power systems, the work that we're doing down in Tyndall in micro communication systems to help in energy efficiency. So we have a major project looking to see can we coordinate this research capability we have here, ally it to industrial applications, so that not only is it just a research centre, but it's actually, Ireland becomes a centre where you start testing out devices, you start delivering solutions in this energy efficiency demand management side that you then sell to the rest of the world. It's a big economic opportunity for us. And we're doing it in Dublin. Like when we're pushing this electric vehicles project, yes, it's to try and get the country ready for the peak oil world that we're going to live in. Yes, it's been done to try and use some of the variable wind supply we have, but it's also been done so we develop the expertise here in the process systems, in the data communication systems, in the building and the engineering systems that we're going to need to make electric vehicles work. So we're pretty much we're right up there, leading the world in terms of, we will be next year when we put out our charging points and put in our ground support system, where we will have the leading electric vehicles available in this country. We have everything pretty much in place to start developing some of these new economies here, and as I said, not only to provide for our own needs, but also to provide us with the opportunity of then trading what we learn with the rest of the world. We're going to make mistakes, it's risky, learning by doing, learning by failing, but that's not a bad thing in my mind. We should embrace some of that sort of culture of innovation and willing to try things out, test, change, adapt, improve, because that's how you do things. That's how you actually get a new economy. And I think we're absolutely well placed in this country to deliver on it. We last day, I suppose, comes down to this room. What's the real constraint, the other last constraint? It is people. It's probably having the real brains, the engineering, technical, innovation, enterprise people who will actually deliver some of the solutions that we're going to need. What we're doing is not going to be easy. I go back to Brendan Halligan, I love his quote when he cited from, I think he was an engineer in Bolton Street, a chemical engineer, a long time ago. And he said, because I think Lyons Baker was on the line, well, in engineering they're always told there that, you know, the difficult we do today, the impossible, but that'll take a little bit of time. But we're going to be asking a lot of our technical people, engineering people, to kind of push the edge of what's possible, to actually discover new solutions that people previously thought impossible. And it is ultimately people and the technological capabilities that our people have that are going to need to deliver that. We have to bring a lot of people in from abroad, and we should embrace that. We don't have huge depth of engineering research capability here, but we do have some very good people. And I think combining our people with people from abroad here will give us, will make us a location where this happens and which benefits the country. And so I'm very glad to come on today and support the work you're doing, Michael, in the association and indeed people here in industry and in our academic institutions, because I think it's good and important work that fits in to an overall picture of what's happening that is very real and I think will be very good for this country.